The yellow pencil you remember from school owes much of its appearance to a product that was sold as a luxury, with a price to match and a name borrowed from one of the most famous diamonds in the world. When that pencil appeared in the late 19th century, its yellow finish helped customers recognize something they were expected to pay considerably more for, which is a fairly unlikely beginning for an object that now gets chewed, borrowed, and forgotten at the bottom of a drawer. The company behind it was L&C Hardtmuth, a pencil manufacturer working in what is now the Czech Republic, then part of Austria-Hungary. During the late 1880s, it introduced a premium pencil called the Koh-i-Noor, and by 1889, the pencil was being shown at the World's Fair in Paris. At the time, good wood could be part of a pencil's selling point, and some fine pencils were left with their grain visible so buyers could judge the material for themselves. An opaque coating could conceal poor timber, which gave manufacturers of expensive pencils a reason to be cautious about covering the entire barrel with paint. Hardtmuth gave its new pencil a yellow lacquer finish and the name of a diamond associated with extraordinary wealth. According to the company's own history, Franz Hardtmuth set its price at almost 3 times that of competing pencils, making the finish part of a much larger attempt to establish the product at the expensive end of the market. The diamond connection was easy to understand. The Koh-i-Noor had passed through the hands of rulers in South and Central Asia before the East India Company took it from the deposed Maharaj Duleep Singh in 1849 under a treaty requiring its surrender to Queen Victoria. By the time the pencil appeared, the name already carried associations with royalty and immense value, which suited a manufacturer trying to persuade people that its writing tools deserved special treatment. There was practical substance behind the salesmanship because making a reliable pencil requires careful control over materials that the customer can barely see. Inside a conventional wooden writing pencil, graphite is mixed with clay and water, formed into narrow rods, dried, and fired. Increasing the proportion of clay produces a harder core, while a higher proportion of graphite generally gives a softer core and a darker mark. That balance allows manufacturers to make different grades for different jobs, from firm pencils for precise lines to softer ones for shading. Once the core is enclosed in wood, however, a shopper has very little to inspect, especially when several brands are lined up together in a shop. A distinctive finish gives the manufacturer a way to make its product recognizable before anyone has written a word with it. The particular choice of yellow is often explained through a connection with China. In the familiar version of the story, highly regarded Chinese graphite and yellow's association with the imperial court made the color an appealing way to suggest quality. Yellow certainly had that status in Qing court dress, where the colors people could wear were regulated according to rank, and yellow robes were reserved for particular members of the imperial family. The explanation fits the luxury image, although the evidence for Hardtmuth's exact reasoning is less secure than the story's frequent repetition might suggest. We can trace the yellow pencil and its reputation more confidently than we can reconstruct the conversation in which somebody chose the paint. As the Koh-i-Noor became successful, other manufacturers adopted yellow for their own pencils, helping the color establish itself in the American market. For a competing business, a familiar appearance could offer an advantage. A customer who associated yellow with a good pencil might give another yellow pencil a chance, even when the name printed along its side was different. One rival took a more combative approach and left us an unusually entertaining piece of stationery advertising. Faber-Castell's account of its green Castell pencil, introduced in 1905, describes yellow Koh-i-Noor pencils as serious competition. The company initially considered crimson for its new product, then abandoned that choice because another competitor already had a red range. Green gave the new pencil an appearance of its own. To advertise it, Faber-Castell showed 2 mounted knights fighting below a castle, each carrying an enormous pencil as a lance. The defeated knight held yellow, while the victorious knight held green, leaving very little room for confusion about which pencil the customer was supposed to buy. The color rivalry was explicit enough to become a jousting match. That green pencil also helps explain why the question depends on where you grew up. Yellow became especially familiar in American classrooms and offices, while other manufacturers built recognizable identities around green, blue, stripes, or exposed wood. The question concerns a widespread convention, with plenty of successful alternatives alongside it. With more companies using yellow across a wider range of prices, the finish became less useful as a promise of exceptional quality. Repeated exposure gave it another meaning. For many people, it became the expected appearance of an ordinary writing pencil, the kind you could buy in a box and hand out around a classroom. The yellow coating on a pencil today tells you very little about the origin of its graphite or how smoothly it will write, but it still connects that everyday object to the competition that helped make the color familiar. A manufacturer trying to sell an unusually expensive pencil contributed to an appearance that would eventually seem ordinary enough to go almost unnoticed, even while we held it in our hands.